All right, so today we're going to be doing some testing with extreme network switching along with NetBeez. And so we'll start off by a simple diagram that we have here. So this is the test setup. So I actually have two X465 switches here. These are extreme network switches that are capable of hosting the NetBeez agent directly onto the switch. So we've opened up the switch capabilities here and allow users to actually run a third-party VM on a switch. So we're actually going to be doing some testing with NetBeez. So NetBeez is a company that makes physical agents and also virtual agents that can do network testing and performance monitoring on demand or scheduled. So we're actually going to show how you can take advantage of loading NetBeez onto one of our switches that are capable of running a VM and show you the capabilities of the feature set. So in this lab, I have two 465 switches. One is a single 465 switch. The other is a stackable. There's in a stack formation. And each of these has an additive SSD drive that's used to SCP the NetBeez agent onto the box and gives the boxes the ability to be able to store the VM on that SSD drive and boot from that. So let's hop into one of the switches and just actually show you how things are working. All right, so I already have SCP'd the NetBeez provided VM image onto the switch, and I have it up and running. So if we want to show it up and running, we can do show VM, and I'll do show VM NetBeez. And we can actually see here that the VM name is NetBeez and it's in the running state. I've allocated a gig of memory to it and one CPU. And you can see that I've also allocated a network interface to the device. And this network interface is just using a default VLAN that's assigned. And I have an uplink from this switch to another switch here that's also running the NetBeez agent, as you can see there. If I actually want to get into the NetBeez agent, I can do open VM and then the name. And now you can see that I'm actually in the console of the NetBeez VM. So I can do an ifconfig, and I can see that I do have an IP address that's been assigned. This NetBeez agent is running DHCP by default and has picked up an IP address. And let's just see, make sure that we have connectivity to the internet. And just to go ahead and ping www.google.com. You can see that we do have internet, and then I can log out, and then I can go ahead and control Y to get back to the actual the NOS of the switch here. All right, so let's go ahead and go into our NetBeez dashboard. So once those agents are up, you can then have them connect into NetBeez dashboard in order to set up some testing things that you want to test either on demand or scheduled. So we'll go ahead and jump right into some of the on-demand testing that you can do. So the on-demand testing is pretty powerful because what you're essentially able to do with the NetBeez VM that's sitting on an edge switch is simulate the experience that an end user would have connected to that edge switch. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to type in the X465 here. And as you can see, I have two of these NetBeez VM agents running. So I'm going to go to my furthest switch. So the stack is the furthest downstream switch and connects back up to the single X465. So I'm going to connect on my 465 stack. And then I'm going to go ahead and just, you have a couple of different options here, iPerf, network speed test. But what I want to do is I want to see what the speed is like going to the internet. And there's a lot of variables that are involved of what the results may be, but let's go ahead and run that and see what it comes back with. All right, so actually what we're doing is we're basically sending the command from the dashboard here to run an Oculus speed test from that NetBeez agent that is running on that stack switch. So as you can see, here are our results. So 620 megs, 559 megs, so our upload and download speed, and then our latency. So that basically, if I were directly connected to that switch with a PC, more than likely I would see very similar results on the bandwidth capabilities that are available from that switch. And so now I'm going to do an iPerf test because, okay, I know that that's the speed that I'm getting between the switches. Now I want to know what the bandwidth availability is between my two switches. So source to destination. So I can say source is my single X465 going back to my stack, and I'm going to go ahead and run an iPerf test. I'm going to leave everything at default and go ahead and hit run. And now again, what's happening is we are going to do an iPerf test directly between those two agents that are running directly on the switch, and then we'll see what the results are. And so again, this is kind of helpful to see if you had these two agents running at the outermost edge portions of your network, you would be able to test what the speed is like between those switches up to a gigabit here. So you can see that we have 936 megabits per second. It's pretty consistent. And then our speed test, of course, doesn't go as high as that. So you can say, okay, the interconnection between these two devices here is not what's limiting these speeds here. So then I can go further up the stream and do additional testing and say, okay, is it just this is the maximum amount of bandwidth I have available on my pipe? Are there more users that are consuming the bandwidth? So we'll just pretend that we have a gigabit of bandwidth available for internet, and we know that between our two switches we have up to a gig as far as testing goes between the two agents. We can say, okay, well, it's probably the remaining bandwidth is being utilized, and so I can go and look somewhere else on my network. So this is very helpful in running on-demand tests as far as speeds and seeing what the capabilities are of the network, and then also to simulate what a client would experience. So then we can also go and look at performing schedule-based testing. So this is great for on-demand testing, but if you wanted to look back in time and say, okay, what may have been going on throughout the network on these agents at the outermost portions of my edge on the switches, we can go and look at that too. So let's go ahead and look at some of our tests here. So you can run a scheduled iPerf test. And so I have one just running, just interconnected between those two switches. This is a lab environment, so I'm not really restricting or tying up any of the bandwidth by doing these tests. And you can see it's pretty consistent as far as how much available bandwidth that we have on those agents then interconnected to those switches. You can also run network speed tests if you like. So actually running a test going out and testing your internet. You can also run VoIP tests, so specific types of protocol testing that lots of VoIP devices use, and you can actually see what the jitter, latency, and other statistics look like on a time basis that you can select. So again, this is simulating what a client would actually experience. So think of it as you have two VoIP phones that sit at two different places at the edge of your network. You can actually test and see, simulate the test and see what the performance would look like. And so again, this is just another way to really help troubleshoot what may be going on, especially when it comes to time of day. So if you have a spike in high latency or packet loss, you can say, okay, let me look at that particular time of day. Was there something going on within that switch or other parts of my network? It really helps to troubleshoot and narrow down where you may have had an issue. Then you can do ping tests as well. So I have a couple of ping tests running here, and these should show similar results, right? Because they're directly interconnected switches. And so you definitely see that they look very similar. So if you saw a spike at the stack level, but not here at the single switch, then you could say maybe something in between these two switches was causing a problem. So again, this is another way to kind of troubleshoot different types of links and interconnection points within your network. I also have some HTTP tests, so you can see that these are very similar as well. And then you can also look at traceroute information too. So that's it. And I hope you enjoyed the video. You can also run reports and other things like that to get a more fine-tuned report of all the information that I showed you. But really excited about how this works. And again, this just shows the power and capability sets of being able to take a third-party VM and run it within one of our Extreme Networks switches at the edge of your network. All right, thank you.